Hello and welcome back, and you're watching the Arthritis Show. Joining me today exclusively in our studios is Mr. Brian Stann. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you very much, Doctor. It's
So
great
good to
be
have
here.
you.
I appreciate it.
Just a little background, Mr. Stann is a UFC fighter. He's a champion, and he's been fighting, cage fighting for some time. He's also a war hero. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I graduated from the Naval Academy in 2003, and then I was commissioned an officer in the United States Marine Corps upon graduation, and I did 2 combat tours in Iraq. And during my time in the Marine Corps was when I got into martial arts. And so I started an amateur career and decided, well, if I'm going to get punched in the face, I might as well get paid for it, right? And so decided to turn pro, and I kept winning fights, and that's how I ended up in the UFC. And so, you know, for me, obviously, taking care of my body, eating right, working out all the time, training for world-class fights, you know, that's my life now, and that's really how I ended up here.
What is your, essentially, what's your routine that you're able to take care of your body? You're in excellent physiques. You're what I call a quintessential of a healthy American man, possibly Captain America. I think that's probably what they call you at your sports. How are you able to keep your physics going?
Well, you know, obviously I work out regularly, and when I'm training for a fight, I'll train anywhere from 2 to 3 times a day, and I'm training 6 days a week, that's a lot of stress on the body. So in order to put my body through that and maintain, you know, being injury-free, a lot of that comes from eating right, supplementing right, getting the right amount of rest. I'll drink 2 to 3 gallons of water a day. You know, trying to take care of my joints. You know, really the biggest stressor in my life has been my joints from the amount of physical activity I put my body through.
I mean, that is definitely, the human joints are very fragile. They're easily damageable. There's no doubt. I mean, you are very powerful, but you are a human being, and certainly you are exposed to all kind of joint injuries. Roman, what's your thoughts on this?
Doctor, the human body, such as the gentleman said, it's a body. It's a system that's very reactive. It's basically like a biological reactive wand. It reacts to the environment. Depending on how you expose or what you expose your body to, your body basically biologizes. Now, there is definitely certain human beings, such as most of the UFC fighters, that can tolerate these tremendous amounts of degenerative stresses, yet come out of the fight with enough reserves inside their system biologically to maintain that level of activity. Now, there is definitely has a lot to do with what they do outside of the ring, and that has to do with proper eating, proper exercising, proper rest. You got to maintain the body in as much as an anti-inflammatory state as possible so it can tolerate these high degenerative stresses that they expose their bodies to, especially the joints.
Yeah, that's a great point. When he says an anti-inflammatory state, that's actually the biggest part of my diet. My diet is centered around, one, you know, eating lean so I can make weight. You know, I currently weigh about 215 pounds. I fight at 185 pounds. So I cut a lot of weight to make that weight. But when I'm training like that, my carbohydrate intake is actually very low, and I take my carbohydrates in right after I work out, so it replaces my glycogen stores. But then I won't eat your big, heavy, starchy carbs, because when you eat things like pasta and breads and these starchy carbs like that, what happens? Inflammation. Your body gets inflamed because it has to digest that, you know, that grain and all that gluten. So I've gone to more gluten-free diet. The time in which I eat my carbs has got to be the right time to make my body more functional, and keeping that anti-inflammatory state so that my body can heal when you're training 2-3 times a day.
Absolutely.
We're watching a video on you right now on the screen, and it's showing that, I want to know what's going, right now you look like you're very concentrating. What's going in your mind? How focused are you when you're doing these fights?
You know, I call it intelligently focused and aggressive. For me, you know, that's kind of my sanctuary. That's where I can go, and when the cage door closes, all the other problems that come with life go away. It's just me and my opponent. I could care less if there's a crowd there or not. But I'm very, very intense. But you can't be an adrenaline junkie who's just really too too intense before you fight, because you've got to be able to see clearly and think analytically. You know, what's my opponent doing to me? Is he reacting to me, or am I reacting to him? Winning, losing the fight, what adjustments you have to make.
The chess game.
It is. It's kinetic chess while you're in there. So you've got to be intelligently focused and aggressive while you're in there, so that, one, the fight's exciting and you're doing what you're supposed to do to win the fight.
Excellent. Do you have any advice for people out there before you go? Anything to help them not to injure themselves?
Oh, certainly. And I think, you know, we've really seen it. This summer has been the biggest span of injuries to high-profile UFC fighters in the history of the promotion. And what we're all learning as fighters is we've got to train smarter. And that's not just when we're training, how hard we train, how often we train, but it's what we do in between the sessions, how much rest we get, how much impact the body absorbs. You know, the times I've gotten injured in my life wasn't because I trained too much, it's because my body absorbed too much impact from falling, getting taken down on the mat, things like that. We've got to become smarter, and you've got to make sure that you have the right coaches and people around you to keep you healthy to compete.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us. When we come back, Dr. Martin Dayton will be joining us, and Dana Brody.